I'm Trey, and you're listening to Us and Them, the show that tells stories of America's culture divides. Back in November 2016, I was in Charleston, West Virginia, right after a tragic shooting. 62-year-old William Pulliam shot and killed James Means, who was 15.
We have now learned the name of that 15-year-old boy who was tragically shot and killed right here on Washington Street last night. His name is
James Means had an exchange with 62-year-old
William Pulliam is in jail tonight and is being charged with first-degree murder.
Pulliam admits to shooting Means twice in the stomach, calling it self-defense.
Pulliam faces a first-degree murder charge for killing James Means. The case is high profile partly because race is involved. Pulliam is white, Means was black. I've been following this case for 2.5 years. There have been multiple delays to the trial for various reasons. One delay was to assess Pulliam's mental competency, a move the Means family just doesn't understand.
We want to know, how are they allowing this to go on for 2 years with that without giving any type of justice to the family at all.
In December of last year, Pulliam was finally declared mentally competent, and a trial was scheduled to start in May. But the Means family continues to wait.
The case was never taken care of, so a lot of people have forgotten, thinking that the case has been resolved and taken care of, when that is not the issue here.
Each November since James' death, his mother and his family gather to remember him. They say it's hard to understand why there's been no trial.
It's inexplicable to someone who's lost someone like that.
That's Bill Forbes, a private attorney in Charleston, West Virginia. Forbes spent 12 years as Kanawha County prosecutor. That's the county where James was killed.
Basically, if someone kills you or your family, a loved one, a child, there's not really much we can do, even with convicting people, that gives people someplace to focus their grief and their anger. But the reality of it is that once you walk into this system, the system itself controls what happens.
Pulliam's case was initially delayed when the court found him mentally incompetent to stand trial. This process evaluates a defendant's mental status at the time of the crime and at the time of the trial. It's a complex legal concept because someone's mental status can change. They can be competent, go to jail, and then be found incompetent to stand trial. Bill Forbes explains.
The interest of the court is justice. The interest of the prosecutors, of course, is justice. The interest of the defense lawyer is what's in the best interest of their client and their law license. And so you end up in a situation where every 4 years he becomes competent, he comes back for trial, he's put in jail, same mental conditions, same pressures, he whacks out again. It could go on until he dies of old age.
After the shooting, William Pulliam went to jail and was held without bail. About a year later, his attorneys asked to have his mental competency evaluated. Pulliam failed that evaluation, and Kanawha County Circuit Judge Charles King ordered Pulliam to a hospital for 90 days. The goal? To see if he could become mentally able to stand trial. Last December, Pulliam finally passed that mental evaluation and was declared competent to stand trial. To the Means family, all these delays just seem like tactics and lawyers working the system. And in some ways, I kind of agree with them. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a defense lawyer's playbook. Keep the client from going to trial by raising questions about their competency. But Bill Forbes tells me that this is an essential part of the legal proceeding.
Normal people don't kill other people. Normal, sane people don't kill other people. So, a priori, everybody who kills somebody is in some degree of not being normal. The only thing you really have to go on there is my client competent to stand trial? Is he competent to assist counsel?
The way you're saying this, it sounds as though this is a routine defense strategy or a tactic that a defense attorney would use.
It is a routine tactic and defense strategy, and if you don't use it, you end up on an ineffective assistance counsel argument later about whether or not you should have used it or not, and 9 times out of 10, courts who care about whether people were properly defended, which is not always the case. But if they care about the level of defense, not doing that means that you've dropped the ball for your client. So any competent attorney where you're faced with a largely unwinnable case and a very unsympathetic client in a horrible fact pattern, you're hoping like heck you can convince somebody that he's was crazy at the time or is too crazy to assist counsel.
I would have did the same thing. It's part of the process.
I also spoke with Rico Moore. He's an African-American criminal defense lawyer in Charleston, and he grew up in one of the city's black neighborhoods. Moore doesn't have any role in the Pulliam case, but I asked him if he thought generally this idea of evaluating for competency was a common tactic.
It's part of the process. If you talk to your client and you believe that at that time he may not have been competent, then you should get him evaluated. I have no issue with that, none whatsoever.
And at first, he was found to be incompetent, and that pushed the trial off for quite some time. And now that has been overturned. And so I'd like to know, how often does something like this happen?
Evaluation happens quite regularly, all right? Continuations happen quite regularly. I've had several murder cases, and they've been continued a few times, by me as well as by the prosecution. So that's nothing new. If he's not competent enough to understand what's going on as far as standing trial, then he shouldn't stand trial at that time.
Like I said, I've been tracking this case since the shooting in 2016. I've talked with lawyers on both sides. I've gotten to know the Means family. I've heard their frustrations and their heartache. With new information about Pulliam's competency, I wanted to circle back and see where we are and how we got here. So often when high-profile cases that once lit up headlines take a long, circuitous route to a trial, the media coverage often dries up. But we're choosing not to look away. Today, we're going to look back at the process, the delays, and the grief that's often left behind. In 2018, around 15,000 people were killed by gun violence in the U.S. Around 3,000 teenagers were either injured or killed. In Charleston, West Virginia, back in 2016, there were 11 murders, and one of them was James Means. I wanted to speak with the Means family at that time, but they were grieving and overwhelmed by media requests. So I reached out to a minister of a local church, and he told me I should talk to Deanna McKinney.
We're at my house right now, but we're on our way to the supermarket.
I'm on the west side of Charleston, West Virginia. I'm walking to the grocery store with Deanna McKinney. She's doing some last-minute shopping for her family's Sunday dinner.
Wait, let me get a card.
She says she needs to buy some cornbread mix and 12 heads of cabbage.
Do you like cornbread or you like dinner rolls? Which one do you like?
I prefer cornbread, but...
You prefer cornbread? Because I love cornbread too. All right, that's what's up. We're going to have some cornbread.
Sunday dinner is a big deal in Deanna's family. Deanna's a de facto mother to her 3 sisters and 2 brothers. When she moved to West Virginia from New York City, they came too. These Sunday dinners are to remind her siblings that someone's always got their back. These gatherings have also anchored her family through some dark times. We're still at the grocery store, and the shopping cart is a little noisy.
So, how long did you and your son live here?
Well, it's going on, 2001 is 15 years.
And your son was shot and killed, was he not?
Yes, he was shot and killed on the porch. He was at home with his friends, like 2 of his friends, eating pizza on the porch. He stayed on the porch.
Deanna's told the story of her son's murder so many times that she can recount it to me, a relative stranger with a microphone, while she picks out cornbread mix at the grocery store. His name was Tymel, and his senseless death is an experience that has defined her life and informed who she is. Deanna lives in a 2-story brick house with a little yard. It's on the corner of a quiet block. As I walk up to the door, I notice a dime-sized hole in one of the window frames on her front porch. It's a bullet hole from the night when her son was murdered. In 2014, a car of young men who were part of a Detroit gang called the 7 Mile Bloods parked outside of Deanna's house and walked up to the porch. With them was a local teen, DJ Carter. Carter pulled out a .40 caliber Glock 23 pistol with an extended magazine clip and fired 17 shots. 4 of those shots hit Tymel in the chest, the arm, and in the face. The attack was part of Carter's initiation into the gang. Tymel wasn't in the gang. He just got caught in the middle. I asked Deanna to tell me about that day in April 2014 when Tymel was shot.
Yeah, we was just out here having a good day that day. You know, my house always been that house where everybody come to. So we all out here having fun, playing. And Tymel always used to, you know, because he's a man, he's strong. He used to always be like, oh, mommy, I could take you, I could take you, I could take you. So we out here, and he thinking he could take me. So I had to show him, yeah, you think you could take me, but I'm your mother, and God's going to give me the strength to lay you out. And he didn't believe me. And sure enough, we out here tussling and everything, and I got him down. So that was just like the highlight of our day, because I actually showed him what it was. Now it's getting dark. He's been out there all day, just sitting on the porch. So he comes in. He had asked me if I wanted pizza. I guess he had ordered some pizza or whatever. So I'm like, no, boy, I want no pizza or whatever. So he go back outside. So then he comes in and he asks for a cigarette. He gets a cigarette, go back outside. Next thing you know, I'm sitting here, and then you just hear pop, 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 pop. But it comes through the window. I hit the floor. I'm on the floor, so I'm waiting for it to stop. Once it stopped, I opened up the door, but it was so much smoke, I couldn't see nothing at first. It was just real smoky. And then, like, I'm blinking, because I'm trying to see through the smoke. I don't know, maybe after the 3rd or 4th blink, I'm looking, and I see him on the ground. Like I said, I'm still in shock, so I'm looking around, whatever, and I just grab my car keys, and I jump in my car, and I'm rushing, you know, to the hospital. And then I go to CMC hospital, whatever. And then I was just there, and I just kept asking them, you know, is he okay? Is he okay? Is he okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, they wasn't telling me nothing. You know what I'm saying? But I'm asking, is he okay? And they like, he's okay, he's okay. But once she came and said the doctor wanted to see me, I knew it wasn't okay. So that's when they told me that he didn't make it. So that was that night. Only thing I knew was, like, it was a new world. I knew that everything looked different. Everybody looked different. The smell is different. Everything is different. Nothing was the same when I left the hospital. I know that.
Tymel bled to death. One bullet punctured a main artery. The guy who fired the 17 shots, DJ Carter, was from the West Side, just like Tymel. They'd even played together on the same championship football team. Every year on the anniversary of Tymel's death, Deanna throws a block party.
How are you? You made it!
It's misting rain, but a respectable crowd has turned out. There are bouncy houses and old-school carnival games and tents serving homemade food, mac and cheese, barbecue, and some incredible jerk chicken.
Did you get that jerk chicken?
I got all over it.
Well, I think it got all over you.
People are walking about with white T-shirts with screen-printed pictures of Tymel. There are posters of black teens who've been shot and killed over the last year. This barbecue has become an annual event on the West Side. It draws a pretty big crowd, and it's got some backing from local churches, the business community, and the city government. Steve Cooper is there. He was the chief crime investigator for the Charleston Police Department. But he's not in uniform. He's helping set up tables and tents and put out food. Cooper investigated Tymel's murder, and he's close with Deanna and her family. Deanna calls him Uncle Coop. Cooper says Deanna's a real inspiration to him.
She's very well known in Charleston. She's led marches in Charleston. more than one. She has spoken at large gatherings of hundreds of people. She's almost like a neighborhood mother, in that so many of these kids respect her, they listen to her, they look up to her, they congregate and socialize at her home in a safe environment, safe, drug-free, violence-free environment.
As the block party winds down, a mother who lost her son earlier in the year shows up. Nafia Adkins, the mother of James Means, the kid whose murder inspired my interest in this whole story, gets word that Deanna has thrown this block party in honor of several of the young people from the West Side who've been killed over the last year or so. Word got back to Nafia that there were posters and balloons memorializing her son James. Deanna says that Nafia walked up to her and threw her arms around her and broke down into tears. Nafia says that after her son's funeral, the newspapers lost interest and no one cared about her grief and her loss. She said it seemed that only folks like Deanna were trying to keep the memory of these slain young people alive. I've had the privilege to hang out with Deanna and her family and to spend time on her couch talking to her about Tymel and her life. She says that she hasn't gotten a lot of quiet moments like this since he died 3 years ago. She's throwing these barbecues and trying to help neighborhood kids, but she's doing this with very little support.
One day I'm going to wake up and this would not be like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have to deal with this. There's days I want to walk away from this house. There's days I want to fight for this house, because this house represents a lot, not just the fact that my son was killed here. You know how many people come knocking on my door? How many people come here needing me, looking somewhere to rest their head, or these kids? So I feel obligated to fight, even though I don't have nothing to fight with.
Deanna is a woman who's been through one of the hardest possibilities of parenthood, the death of a child. And she's trying to make meaning out of this tragedy. When I'm around Deanna, she inhabits this strong optimism. But every now and then, I get a glimpse of fear that everything is not going to work out, that she might lose her house, that the future might be just as difficult for her granddaughter Amari. To me, her mission to improve the lives of the young people in her neighborhood seems like a quixotic battle against entrenched racism, systematic oppression, bias against African American mothers, and violence in a community that's often cruel to itself. But she keeps on anyway, for her community and for her granddaughter, Amari. Since I first spoke with Deanna McKinney, a few things have changed. In October of last year, she was appointed to the city council, where she represents part of the city's west side. But Deanna has also faced financial hardships and recently lost her home, the home that contained her last memories of Tymel, and the home that was the gathering place for the community. For the McKinney family, there was some justice. DJ Carter pled guilty to first-degree murder for Tymel's death, and 2 others were charged in connection with the crime. Seeing someone convicted and serve time for a crime can offer a family some sense of justice. But what happens when the process drags on? It's been over 2 years since James Means' murder, and Pulliam's trial still hasn't begun. Back in 2016, I sat in on a preliminary hearing for Pulliam's trial.
We're on the record, Kanawha County, West Virginia, Kanawha County Magistrate Court, for the matter of a preliminary hearing in a matter of the state of West Virginia versus William R. Pulliam.
I've never been to a hearing like this before. I usually cover arts, culture, and education, not crime.
Your Honor, this is a murder case. My client is facing the rest of his life in prison. If we do not
But the story of this killing really struck me somewhere deep. So I squeeze into the jury box with some other local reporters.
The state has no business telling us how to investigate our case.
On one side are a few family members of the victim, James Means. The oldest brother, Antoine Means, leans heavily on the wooden railing that divides the courtroom. He stares straight ahead, dark bags shadow his eyes. His face is the epitome of grief.
What kind of video surveillance is
The attorney for the state, Mary Claire Akers, questions Detective Chris Leoy. The detective explains that he spoke with witnesses and then heard that there was a video of the shooting, captured by a surveillance camera at a home nearby.
And once you viewed that video, did you develop a suspect from that video?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was the suspect developed from that video?
It ended up being Mr. William Pullman.
Is Mr. Pulliam in this room today?
Yes, ma'am.
William Pulliam sits at a wooden table. He's an older man, in his early 60s, with a round bald spot on top of his head. He's wearing an orange work jacket, orange socks, and thin brown shower slippers. There are shackles around his hands and feet. He's got this "how did I get here" look on his face.
Yes, ma'am.
Almost seems annoyed.
What did you see on the video?
I observed one individual, which ended up being the suspect, crossing the street. The victim, which was identified as James Means, standing on the north side of Washington Street.
So here's what we know. On November 21st, 2016, William Pulliam goes to the Dollar General store down the street from his apartment. Outside the store, he has some kind of argument with a group of kids. And when he's walking back home, he again has words with the same group of young men sitting on a porch. One of those young men is James Means. Pulliam crosses the street and heads home. James follows him, allegedly with a BB gun tucked into his waistband.
This BB gun that was found, can you describe the gun?
It was like a black handgun.
Okay. So it looked like a real gun?
Yes.
Pulliam is nearly home, but then he turns back and walks to face James Means. The neighborhood camera picks up what happens next.
James Means had nothing in his hands, and I observed Mr. Pullman pull out a gun and discharge one round. James Means then falls to the ground. As he gets up, William Pullman fires another round.
This time, Pulliam shoots James in the back. After Pulliam was arrested, the police report notes that he confessed to shooting James Means. And then he said to the arresting officer, "The way I look at it, that's another piece of trash off the street." As I continued to follow this case, I wanted to learn more about William Pulliam and James Means. Why would William Pulliam call James Means a piece of trash? And why would Means follow Pulliam after their exchange? After a break, in search of answers, we'll hear from James's family and Pulliam's neighbors.
Turn on the news every morning and watch it. And they had a grainy video of the alleged shooter of the incident, and I told my wife, "Boy, that looks a lot like Bill Pulliam." Half joking. I never would have dreamt that Bill would have done that, but again, it's not completely a surprise, I guess.
James, he was the young one, he was the small one. He wanted to fit in, he wanted to belong. So he was more so a follower.
I mean, James did everything. "Mama, you need me to do this. Mama, you need me to help you with this." He would help clean. He would cook. He would take his sisters and brothers to school.
I'm struggling with talking about it now because, that was my dude.
I'm Trey Kay, and this is Us and Them, which is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council, the CRC Foundation, and the Daywood Foundation.
In difficult times, music gives us peace, brings us together, and helps heal us. It calms our nerves and brightens our days. That's why we're bringing you classic episodes of Mountain Stage on air and in our podcast. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find something that's familiar or brand new and feel the power of live music on our website, mountainstage.org.
I'm Trey Kay, and you're listening to Us and Them. We're looking back at the 2016 killing of James Means and how delays in William Pulliam's murder trial have tested many people's faith in the justice system. Cities across the country have seen racially charged shootings and killings, and my hometown of Charleston, West Virginia is no different. And sometimes when race is involved, things get ugly. And I want to warn you that there is some use of the N-word later on in this segment. In order to learn more about the man who faces first-degree murder charges, I head to Pulliam's old neighborhood, where the crime took place. His apartment is on the east end of Charleston.
He was our neighbor of 2 houses down for 5 years.
He seemed pretty friendly, but kind of kept to himself.
This is Gabrielle DeHalia and her husband, Todd Jarrett. Did you engage in conversation with him? Or?
I never did. I mean, no more than the general pleasantries of just, have a good day kind of thing.
I did, but it was about his cat Tux, who is a 17-pound behemoth cat. And when we would walk our dogs by, I would be like, hey, how's your cat? And the cat was always very friendly, and he would be like, how are your dogs?
DeHalia says that Pulliam was a conscientious neighbor. He would mow the grass regularly, and he would tell them beforehand so they could move their cars to get out of the way of the grass shavings. When the shooting happened, DeHalia and Jarrett said they were shocked. DeHalia says she thought Pulliam was just a lonely old man. Jarrett says he never imagined that his neighbor would shoot a kid. When the police searched Pulliam's apartment, they found his cat, and DeHalia and Jarrett volunteered to take him.
The landlord and the officers brought over this huge trunk box of toys and food and all of this stuff for this cat. So we realized, he loved this cat. He loved this cat.
It strikes me that no one else in Pulliam's life came to take care of the cat. I called his ex-wife. She said that she has worked really hard to get away from Pulliam and has put those years behind her. I reached out to his daughter, his son, his sister, and even his ex-brother-in-law. None of them responded to my request for an interview. DeHalia says I should get in touch with Billy Joe Payton, that he knew Pulliam and owned the building where he lived.
The way I found out, I was preparing to go to work, turn on the news every morning and watch it. And they had a grainy video of the alleged shooter of the incident, and I told my wife, boy, that looks a lot like Bill Pulliam. Half joking.
Still investigating. According to the criminal complaint, Pulliam expressed no remorse, saying, the way I look at it, that's another piece of trash off the street. He later denied saying that.
And the next report I saw is that William Pulliam had been arrested, and I was stunned, but not in terms of the racist rant. Perhaps a man that had racist tendencies. I never would have dreamt that Bill would have done that, but again, it's not completely a surprise, I guess.
Billy Joe Payton has known Pulliam since elementary school. Then, about 10 years ago, Payton needed some work done around his house, and he hired Pulliam. He calls him Bill. Payton says he built a porch, redid a ceiling, and a bunch of odd jobs around the house over the years.
I got to know Bill pretty well. I trusted him to the point where I would give him a key, and if we weren't home, he came in and worked and locked up when he left. So, yeah, we didn't pal around outside the workplace, but I got to know him, I thought, fairly well over the course of the years.
Then, a few years ago, Payton bought a piece of property on East Washington Street. He planned to run a business out of the first floor and rent the upstairs apartment. So Payton hired Pulliam to fix up the new place.
And I'm guessing, and these are all approximate dates, maybe 5 years or so ago. It seems like a series of bad things were happening to Bill.
His tools were stolen, Payton says. And Pulliam had health problems, which included being diabetic.
I sensed that he was having trouble at home. He shared some things with me, that he was having some domestic problems.
Payton says Pulliam told him that he was angry with his daughter for hanging out with a, quote, bad crowd. But I heard that Pulliam had more complex legal problems with his wife and daughter. So I went down to the courthouse and pulled his file. There's a complaint in a domestic abuse case. I asked Peyton to read it.
The complaint says, on the above date, the defendant struck his daughter with a closed fist several times in the face, kicked his daughter in the stomach, and the daughter is currently pregnant. And he also shoved his wife to the ground. The wife was bleeding, and the daughter had visible bruising to her left eye and bleeding from the lip. That's very serious, obviously. That's not the story that Bill had told me.
Pulliam pleaded no contest to a domestic battery charge. That's basically accepting a conviction without admitting guilt. Peyton said he didn't know any of this. He saw Pulliam as a normal guy who was down on his luck. So he let Pulliam stay in the upstairs apartment in the building he was rehabbing. And he didn't charge him rent. And that's where Pulliam was living when he shot James Means.
James was everything to me. I treated
This is James Means' mother, Nafia Adkins. She tells me to call her Faye. I meet Faye one afternoon at Deanna McKinney's house. As we talk, every now and then Faye stops speaking, cradles her face gently in her hand, and winces in pain. She says she has these mini strokes from all the stress she's been going through. She's lost her house to a fire, her other sons are facing legal problems, and she's still grieving the death of James. It's a lot. James was born with only one lung and one kidney. So Faye says he wasn't tough and roughhousey like the other kids.
He was quiet. He was more like a mama's boy. James did everything. Mama, you need me to do this. Mama, you need me to help you with this. He would help clean. He would cook. He would take his sisters and brothers to school.
The Means family is big and close. James has a lot of cousins, and they hung out together so often that they were more like brothers and sisters. I go to meet some of his cousins one day. About 7 of them are hanging out on Faye's sister's porch.
I'm Sante Means, and I'm James Means' cousin.
Sante is 15, the same age as James. She's tall and thin with a disarming smile.
I've been asking everybody, what are memories of James? What do you remember? You're smiling.
I'm smiling because I remember one night he stayed the night of our house, and
I heard he stayed over here a lot.
Yeah, he did.
Sante remembers that he spent the night over at their house after a birthday party. They all slept on a blow-up bed in the dining room.
He woke us up and was like, "Y'all hungry?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "You see that bread on top of the refrigerator? I'm about to go make me some Barber bread." I said, "What is Barber bread?" He said, "It's barbecue and bread." And I said, "I don't want any, no thanks." And then I actually tried it. It was actually good.
So what is it, like white bread with barbecue sauce?
Yeah.
Everything that he ate was bread. It was like he just...
These funny stories get mixed in with the details the kids know about James' death. Several of them had seen a Snapchat video that James' companions somehow recorded showing James just after he was shot. I'm struck with how the kids move back and forth between laughter and sadness, holding on to the image of James and the Barber bread in one instant, and the bleeding James on the ground in the next. James was in the 9th grade when he died. So I go in search of teachers who had James over the years, who maybe knew parts of him that his family didn't see.
James, he was the young one. He was the small one. He wanted to fit in. He wanted to belong. So he was more so a follower.
This is Katrina Helm. She was James' teacher from the 3rd to the 5th grade. She was his favorite teacher. Helm taught special ed. When she met James in the 3rd grade, he could barely read. He had ADHD, so he had trouble settling down without medication. They worked together for hours, sounding out words and spelling, On the weekends, Katrina would take James and other students to the movies or the circus.
I just wanted to expose them to other things.
She knew James' mom, Faye, and she knew that the family was poor and sometimes homeless. So Helm saw these outings as not just a way to help James pass a standardized test, but excursions into the world to show James something outside the neighborhood where he lived. One time, Helm took him to a sit-down restaurant with waiters.
And we had a menu. It's just that basic task he didn't know anything about. I remember his first time he saw one, he was so excited because he thought he got to eat everything on there. And we had to explain to him, no, teach him how to narrow it down. What do you want? What do you like? And, things of that nature.
Helm heard of James' death from a text message. She said at first she hoped it was a mistake. But then as she learned the story, parts of it sounded like the student she knew, and other parts were hard to believe.
I don't know if I ever got the true story, other than the fact of knowing that James ran his mouth, or James, I heard that James had a BB gun. So again, you're talking about a kid that was a follower, not a leader.
Katrina Helm knew James during his elementary school years, but he was a teenager when he died. I wanted to find someone who knew him more recently.
Hey, where are you supposed to be? Who? So why are you going to miss the rest?
So I went to James Middle School.
Let's go. Yeah, he was in special ed. He was in my class too in special ed.
This is Wayne Casey. He taught James at Stonewall Jackson Middle School, and it's clear to me that James was special to him.
I'm struggling with talking about it now. Because, that was my dude. I had him since he was a little kid, so it's a little bit different.
Did you ever go over to the house, have meals and stuff like that?
All the time.
Casey would hand James a few dollars every now and then. One year, he even bought James an Xbox for Christmas. But he also helped him with normal, everyday things.
Take him to go get his hair cut, all that.
Apparently, he liked to have his whole hair.
I hated it all wild, so I just took him down to this street right here and got it cut so it could be trimmed up right.
I'd heard that at the tail end of his 8th grade year, James had been sent to an alternative school for kids with disciplinary problems. It's called the Chandler Academy. So I asked Casey why James was sent to Chandler. And at first he can't remember, but then it hits him.
Yeah, we did send him to Chandler as an 8th grader. We did, yeah.
Do you remember why?
He took a phone. He took a phone that he thought it was his. The custodian had a phone, and he took it out of her back pocket.
Casey says he thinks it was all a mistake. James was at school late, around 6 o'clock, when everything was shutting down for the day. That phone in the custodian's pocket, it had the same red cover as James. So he grabbed it. Casey thinks in the end it was a miscommunication, but still.
You can't touch an employee, regardless. You know what I'm saying? He should have asked her, hey, let me see that phone, and then it could have got solved like that.
But James didn't think that far ahead. Instead, he acted on impulse. As I walk out of Casey's classroom, I notice that there's a picture of James taped on the wall by the door.
Can you take a picture of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a picture of James with his afro styled just like he'd gone to the barber shop with Wayne Casey. I ask him why he put James' photo here.
We use that for motivation. Stay out, don't be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Stay out of the wrong place.
Right after the shooting, I went onto Facebook to see how Charleston as a community was reacting. There were a lot of threads of people venting their anger and outrage. But I noticed a comment by a woman named Jean Simpson. I went to meet her at the soup kitchen she ran at the time. It's called Man a Meal.
When I got on Facebook, it was multiple people that I've known and have known for years that were saying, oh, that poor child, what a victim, oh, this is tragic. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think this is. I think that he was defending himself.
Simpson grew up with Pulliam. She hasn't seen him in years, so when she read that he'd been accused of a crime, she was startled.
wait a minute, I know this person, at least give him an opportunity, before everybody hangs him. Is the child really a poor, innocent child? I don't know.
Simpson said she'd heard rumors that James and his friends were harassing Pulliam. And she doesn't think that this shooting has anything to do with race.
The kid could have been white and harassed that person that had the gun in the same way, and the same thing could have happened.
When I spoke to the Means family, his Aunt Teresa mentioned that 3 days before he was shot, James told her that an older white man had been bothering him. And heads up, she uses the N-word in describing the exchange.
James had already spoke on someone harassing them and calling them niggers and hassling them over there by his friend's house.
When she first heard that James had been shot, Teresa Means didn't remember this encounter.
We're thinking it was some kids. And when they said that it was Pulliam, and they described him, and they said it was an older Caucasian man, and how the incident happened, that brought me back.
She doesn't know if Pulliam was the same guy who was bothering James and his friends. And so I went back to ask people like Billy Joe Payton, who knew Pulliam, if they would describe him as racist.
I feel that, racism probably played a role in the shooting. I think there's no doubt about it. Why Bill decided that he had to shoot first and not, if he had a disagreement with someone, walk away. He is an adult. He's in his 60s. He has, if he's guilty, taken the life of a young man who never had a chance at life yet, and his life is gone, his family is destroyed, and it's a tragedy, and it's a legacy, I think, of our racial inequality in this country.
Billy Joe Payton is one of the few white Charlestonians willing to confront the possibility that racism played a role in this shooting. Standing up to racial inequality can be messy, uncomfortable business, and a lot of people in the town that I know want to keep it at a distance. I tried to talk with Pulliam's estranged family, but they didn't want to. Members of the black community were forthcoming, but they were somewhat wary. That could be because they've seen how the media tends to thugify young African Americans involved in shootings. On top of that, they feel like the justice system doesn't work for them. Here's how James Means' uncle, Derek, explains it to me.
The justice is not real. I don't feel like the justice system is doing what they're supposed to be doing here in Charleston.
Former Kanawha County prosecutor Bill Forbes has some idea about race and racism in the judicial system.
10% of West Virginia is African American. Charleston may be a little bit higher. The other side of that coin is if you go to the jail, it's probably 40 or 50% of the population is African American. Now, I don't care how you want to address that. It stinks. There's no way to make that to where it's not racial and where there's not a racial component underlining the whole system. And I'm assured that your average African American who can read and write grow up and just understand that the law is not fair to them.
And then, what happens when a family waits years for a trial? Defense lawyer Rico Moore says it's tough to explain.
As a black person in America, at least most of us, we don't have a lot of confidence in the process. People are saying, well, the system is broken. The system is not broken. The system is just not meant to work for us. But as a defense attorney, the issue I see a lot is when I say these people aren't educated as well, that does not mean that they are stupid. They are not stupid, all right? Let's get that out there. What I mean is the way that the system works and is explained, it's usually not explained in a manner that they understand. So a lot of stuff is lost in translation. But then there's also the socioeconomic divide. There's the racial divide. So you're trying to explain this to people who don't know what you're talking about. And you can't relate to them, so you can't explain it to them.
What concern do you have when a case like this drags on for years?
As a defense attorney or as a black citizen in Charleston?
Give me both. As
a defense attorney, I wouldn't have an issue with it. If it's, it's part of the process. And as a defense attorney, hell, over time, some of the evidence may degrade, may help me out. As an everyday citizen, it's kind of hard to separate the two because I have I have a different knowledge about how the system works. I know that it's possible for him to end up still going to trial, But as a black citizen, I know that the system is not fair to us. And as a black attorney, I definitely know it's not fair to us. A lot of times, it's not intentional. The bias it's just there. It's internal.
But here's something to consider. Everyone in this town will be watching this trial whenever it happens. And depending on the verdict, it might not be possible to keep the community's reaction to this case at a distance. James Means' family knows that Pulliam's defense rests on his fear that his life was threatened by James with a BB gun that looked like a real gun, and that his supposed fear could get Pulliam acquitted. James' little brother Levon wonders, though, whether fear really explains what happened.
My question is, he said he was scared. Even if he was scared of James, why would he shoot him twice? He could have shot him once. He shot him again when my brother went up and was running. He shot him again. He shot him twice. Why? Even though he was scared of him, when he shot him the first time, why would he shoot him the second?
Can we answer that?
Yeah.
I think that's it. I don't know how to answer it. I think it's a good question. I'm still having trouble answering young Levon Means. I think it's a question that not just the jury, but the whole Charleston community is going to have to wrestle with.
When James Means was gunned down in 2016, it made headlines across the country. Network news anchors recounted the shooting and repeated Pulliam's comment, likening James to a piece of trash on the street. In Charleston, there were concerns that the case might boil hot, like the trials for the Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown killings. City leaders wanted to prevent a chaotic outcome, like the riots in Ferguson. There was concern that activists would come to Charleston and stir up the community. But none of this happened. Defense lawyer Rico Moore puts it this way.
It's like stubbing your toe. You hit your foot, you're hopping around. A couple of weeks later, it feels a little better. A little bit, as time goes on, it dissipates, the pain dissipates, and you go right back to, the status quo, right where you were at. That's all. That's what happens. And in the black community, you're outraged when it happens, but as time goes on and nothing's happening, it's par for the course. Nothing's happening.
Initial outrage often yields to a justice system with its own purpose. It's designed to punish crime with a moderate, deliberate, methodical approach. That's what we want, right? But it's a system that can be a prime example of the us and them divide. We see cases from all over the country where people receive different forms of justice. Rico Moore says it well. The system is not designed to work for us. In fact, even when the system is working, sometimes the process gets lost in translation. That's when people who feel failed by police and prosecutors don't really understand. If the steps in a complex case are not explained clearly, how do you expect people to have faith in the system? We need to bridge that barrier and make those connections. We need to help the justice system work for all of us. When some people aren't served well, none of us are. For now, James Means' family will wait for a trial and wait for a day when justice comes.
I have all my faith in the Lord and my family and friends, and I'm just going to hold my head up high and know that this is going to come to an end.
It's part of the process. If you talk to your client and you believe that at that time he may not have been competent, then you should get him evaluated.
Is the child really a poor, innocent child? I don't know.
Normal, sane people don't kill other people, so everybody who kills somebody is in some degree not being normal.
He said he was scared. Even if he was scared of James, why would he shoot him twice? He could have shot him once. He shot him again.
You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this show was me, Trey K, Ashley Cleek, Mitch Hanley, Ibby Caputo, Loretta Williams, Samantha Gatzik, and Kate Smith. Special thanks to Brianna Warner, Communications Director from the Kanawha County Schools. Michael Lipton and Tristan Lozow wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. Rita Kursafi provides us with images for the web. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the West Virginia Humanities Council, the CRC Foundation, and the Daywood Foundation. Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the Mentorship Program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.